Reach new heights of calm, focus, and happiness. You're on Mindfulness Mode with me, your host and mindfulness life coach, Bruce Langford. Yes, Mindful Tribe. I am so excited today, as I think I always say that because I always am. And I have a person here who is a trained hypnotherapist. And of course, I'm very interested in that because I've been doing hypnosis for quite a while. Pilates, yoga. She's a meditation teacher. She's founder of, get this, she's founder of the mindful movement. So we're going to be talking all about that. And I love what it says in her bio. It says she's become an oasis for those looking to tap into their inner calm. Now, if that isn't a beautiful sentence for a meditation person, for a mindfulness person, I don't know what it is. It also says she helps you develop a positive mindset and heal from the stress that's blocking fulfillment. And that's another great sentence. And wow, hasn't it been true though, with COVID, with the pandemic, a lot of us are feeling we are not reaching our level of fulfillment. So Sara can help you with this. So Sara, are you in mindfulness mode today?
I hope to be. I endeavor to be in mindfulness mode every day.
That's good. You certainly seem to be. And I was just commenting on all the plants behind you, and that it was interesting talking to you about those plants. And do those plants help you have a sense of mindfulness in your life, do you think?
I guess they do. I never really thought about it, but I think they do. Yeah, taking care of them and looking at what their needs might be in any given moment. I actually have one plant that is not in this room, but it really tells you exactly when it's ready to be watered. It sort of wilts and
Uh-huh.
it looks very sad and it looks like it needs attention, and that's my cue.
Does it almost feel like having a pet?
I guess a little bit. Yes. Yes.
I like that. I like that. Tell us what mindfulness means to you, Sara.
That's a good question. Mindfulness to me, I think the meaning of it or how I have approached it has evolved over the years. But I would say that mindfulness is about being awake to the true experience of life as you're experiencing it, so that you can really get the fullness of the experience as it's unfolding.
Well, I like that sentence too. You are a wordsmith. You can just let those words just all fit together like a puzzle, and then it sounds impressive. How long have you been teaching meditation and working in the field of mindfulness, Sara?
Well, I would say that I have been using it in everything that I have done as an adult, although maybe I didn't know that I was
Hmm.
teaching mindfulness. My first career out of college was a kindergarten teacher. And even as a kindergarten teacher, I think that I approached that as with mindfulness, if you will. The
Hmm.
kids you have a group of 25 or so 5-year-olds, and you need to help them be aware of themselves. And
Hmm.
even just using different levels of volume of my voice allowed me
Yeah,
to interact with them in a way that um, brought them back into the moment. And
sure. And how long
even
were you a
though
kindergarten teacher for?
not very long, I worked in college, in preschools and with young kids. But then after my first year of teaching, I had my daughter, and so I didn't go back. I
Sure.
intended to,
Yeah.
but I brought my teaching into the Pilates and yoga world. And even though at that time I wasn't necessarily teaching mindfulness or meditation, again, it's a mind body practice. And even in teaching someone how to exercise or move, there was a lot of mindfulness that was interwoven in my
Hmm.
teaching just
Yes.
naturally.
So which came first, yoga or Pilates?
For me, Pilates came first. And actually, when I started teaching yoga, it it's a little embarrassing to say, but I never liked the meditation part of it
Okay,
because it was so difficult for me.
sure.
I always found my entrance into mindfulness through the body, and I still do, but I think I have
Physically.
a little bit more ability to sit in quiet and silence and stillness. And but at the time, I think around 25 or 26 when I first started practicing and teaching yoga, and it was very difficult for me to, like, shavasana, the final relaxation pose, was always the most difficult, where you're just being.
Hmm.
But now I think it's sort of flipped around, where I much prefer
Yeah.
the meditation component of yoga.
Yeah. Well, if I could add my 2 cents worth, I think it's an advantage that you had a challenge with the meditation part. You know why? Because so many people I talk to feel the same way. And if
Yeah,
you were that person that, oh, well, the meditation, that's easy, everybody can do that, then people wouldn't relate to you the same way.
sure.
But the fact that you struggled with it helps you to teach others who struggle with it. Does that seem like a
That's true.
truth?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I was the one that at the end of class, when the teacher was starting to prepare for Shavasana, I would, make an excuse to to leave the class.
Yes.
And but that was really what I needed the most at the time. I just didn't really know it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell us more about what Pilates is and what it does for you as a human.
Sure. Well, Pilates it has some similarities to yoga. I think yoga is a little bit more mainstream, although Pilates is sort of coming up behind it. Uh, but it's a mind body practice, meaning you are being intentional, you're being aware of what you are doing and using your awareness, your mind, to affect change in the physical body.
I see. And so what are you actually doing? Are you following a leader all the time when you go? Like you have to go to a class then?
I would say most people start with a class to learn the exercises, to learn the philosophy of Pilates, and then perhaps could transition into a personal practice. I do think as an instructor, I love to have my students eventually become independent
Hmm.
and be able to excuse me, rely on their own understanding of their body. So while I do teach a specific, exercise method, I think that each individual person is their own best teacher when it comes to what they need in any given exercise or any given moment, because
Hmm.
I'm not in their body. I can't feel what they're feeling. And I don't know. I mean, I have training, obviously, and I can see alignment and I can see someone's ability to move in a certain way, but I don't really know what they need as well as they do.
So if I just really loved Pilates and didn't love yoga so much, tell me,
Mhm.
what do you think would be the reason for that? What is the advantage of
Mm.
Pilates over yoga?
I think that is a tough question because both methods have variations. So,
Yes.
depending on who a yoga teacher has learned from or what sort of lineage they've learned from, they might have a very different style. So, an Ashtanga yoga class or a flow, like a power yoga class, might feel very different than a restorative yoga class or a, a general hatha yoga class. And then the same is true for Pilates, where, there's a classically trained Pilates instructor versus a contemporary trained Pilates instructor. So they feel a little different. Um, that's not necessarily answering your question, but I
Hmm.
would say for either direction or either modality, being able to connect with an instructor on an energetic personality level is really important. And again, just really checking in with what the individual needs are. meaning I personally might find a lot of value working with, instructor A versus instructor B, just might not be the right fit for me, no matter what their training is or what actual method they're using.
Well, here's a question for you. When I work with clients and I encourage people to do yoga because I think it can really help that mind-body connection. There are a lot of
Hmm.
reasons I might encourage them to do this, but in my experience in the past, I've had men say to me, well, I feel like if I sign up for a yoga class, I might be the only guy and I'm not comfortable with that. But if I suggest Pilates, they don't have that same thought. They don't have that same
Mm.
idea. Is that true? Is it true that yoga in the world is seen as more of a feminine thing, whereas Pilates maybe not so much?
I'm not sure. I think that group classes in general are predominantly female.
Hmm.
And that I think that's just the nature of group classes.
Yes.
I do think that, like, my husband practices yoga a lot, and he will go to a class, and he always comes back and he says, "Oh, I was the only guy again." And he's fine with it. He's
Sure.
practiced yoga a lot, but
Yeah. Yeah.
eh, I think that probably the percentages in Pilates are fairly similar.
Are they? Okay.
Um, I guess it depends on the location, the demographics, the teachers. Um,
Is
yeah, it's
that a
hard to
problem
say.
though? Like, do you find that there are very many guys that are just simply uncomfortable being in a class with predominantly women?
I I would say probably, yeah. I mean, not having had too many conversations with men about that specifically. I do work with some clients individually, and I do think that one-on-one tends to be higher, male
Yeah.
involvement. Um,
And do you
but
teach online? Do you do classes online?
I do some. I do primarily pre-recorded classes, and then
Okay.
they're on our YouTube channel. So that's a good way to, get an introduction to Pilates or yoga
Yeah.
without having to, number one, make a financial commitment or be in a room with other people where you feel like you might be self-conscious or uncomfortable in any way. But you don't have someone looking at you and watching you and helping to give specific cues based on your individual needs. So
Well,
there's
we
pros and
seem,
cons.
yeah, sure. We seem to be entering a time where, um, you know, guys are becoming more comfortable with their inner feminine, and
Hmm.
women are probably becoming more comfortable with their inner masculine. I'm not sure about that. What do you
Sure.
think? What's your opinion on all that?
Sure. I do think that, there's a lot of conversation around gender roles,
Yeah,
gender
yeah.
identities for sure. I have two teenage kids, and that conversation comes up frequently in our house. And I think it's just more, it's a more open conversation than it ever has been in the past. And, people, there's a spectrum for everyone. And we're maybe, as a society, being more tolerant or more comfortable with that
Mhm,
spectrum.
mhm.
I hope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so how many classes do you do a week? Like live classes?
Sure. Uh, since the pandemic, I've really significantly reduced the number of classes that I'm teaching on a weekly basis. And I've moved a little bit more into the hypnotherapy appointments and working with clients that way. But I think at this point, I'm teaching about 3 to 4 hours a week, where
Okay.
it used to be um, much more significant than that. Maybe 20 to 30 hours a week was where I was maybe 2, 3 years ago.
Okay. Well, I'm really
Yeah.
interested in your hypnotherapy work that you do. So tell us more about that. How did you get into it? And tell us what that practice looks like.
Sure. Well, coming from teaching movement, mind body movement, clients and students would always come to me and they were approaching their practice, their movement practice, with a desire to make a change, which I think a lot of people do, right? My son is 15 and he's going to the gym a lot and he's trying to get like big and strong. And
Yeah.
so he's trying to make a change in his body. He wants to feel a certain way. And our movement practice definitely can facilitate that.
Hmm.
However, there was always something that I found was missing, a missing link to make the changes that were desired. And that was what I had discovered for myself all around my beliefs and my identity in a way, like how the kind of person that I identified as. And that's really what drew me to hypnosis and meditation, was a desire to understand myself better and to connect with what I was feeling and how those emotions were playing a role in how I was behaving,
Hmm.
my reactions or my responses to various situations. At the time, I was, I guess I was in my early 30s and I was a mom at the time, and I was a business owner and teacher of movement. And I was lacking confidence and uh, I was lacking a way to make difficult decisions in my life. I didn't really know what was important to me. And that's what drew me to meditation and hypnosis, was to kind of figure out who I was in a way.
Hmm.
And it made a significant difference for me to understand what was important to me and be able to use my values and those things that were important to me to make those important decisions. Uh,
Right.
and then, I've always been a teacher, so
Yeah.
the next step was to help other people do the same thing that I did.
So do you do self hypnosis as well?
I do, yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say I tend to lean towards that, maybe more than meditation, because it feels like I am doing something as opposed
Hmm.
to just being, which, as you
Right. So
mentioned
it's easier
before,
for you. Yeah.
exactly, that
Yeah.
kind of state of being was and is still challenging for me, for sure.
Mm. So I'm interested about your training when you became a hypnotist. Where did you learn?
Well, I originally trained with a woman here in Maryland who, it was a local training, and it actually ended up being one on one,
Hmm.
which was amazing. And I learned a lot, and I was able to start using the practices that I learned, the strategies and tools that I learned almost right away with instructors that I was training.
Hmm.
And as I had said, that was one of the reasons why I looked into that practice to begin with, was to develop confidence in my teaching abilities, confidence in my ability to connect with students. So at the time, I was training other Pilates instructors, and that really, I think, set the training apart from other Pilates teacher training, because I had this mindset approach to be able to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So
Sarah,
that
tell
was
us a
my
story about a client that you've worked with that it was just really quite incredible, the change that took place, the transition.
sure. I love all my client stories. It's
Yeah,
hard to choose just one.
I'm sure.
The transformations, the changes that clients are able to make is really, I think, what lights me up and keeps me excited about my work. Um, that being said, let me see if I can think of one specific person.
Sure.
Um, Well, because confidence is really a passion of mine, that's what brought me into the field in the first place. I'll tell you a story about a client that I worked with who came to me specifically for confidence and confidence in her relationships and confidence as she's an artist. So she came looking for the confidence and the willingness, the belief in her ability to have her art be a way to make a living. So before we met, it really had just been a hobby of hers, and she had a studio at her house that she was a little, disorganized with, and she would go in on occasion, and she really enjoyed it. And she was actually a phenomenal artist. So we worked together, and we looked at her past, some experiences from her childhood, to help her to understand what the beliefs that she formed about herself were that were contributing to this lack of confidence that she experienced in her present life. And once she was able to understand those beliefs that were getting in her way, then she could recognize that while they may have been true when she was a child, they may have served her even to, protect her or to help her, thrive at that age, they weren't true anymore, and they were just holding her back and, keeping her from experiencing the fulfillment of her art that she really desired. And once she was able to understand that and let those beliefs go, then she, made room for new beliefs that she was confident, she was worthy of the success in her artistic endeavor that she really desired. And I got an email from her a couple months after the session, and she was, articulating all of the positive changes in her life, including some significant art deals that she was really excited about. And so that was exciting for me too.
Yeah, it
It
must have
wasn't
made
it
you feel
wasn't
great.
mine. Exactly. And I always say to my clients that they're the ones doing all the hard work. And it is a little bit challenging to be willing to be, brave and courageous enough to go back to events and see how our beliefs are causing these habitual patterns that are hard to get out of. But
Mhm.
it's worth it for sure.
Definitely worth it. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. The name of your company is really excellent. The Mindful Movement, and it's the mindfulmovement.com. So Mindful Tribe,
Yeah.
that's where you can find Sara, the mindfulmovement.com. Tell us about that. What do we find when we get there, and what do you
Sure.
do under that umbrella? Tell us all about it.
Sure. I have a very good friend who she's like my champion, and I really love her and her support. And she always reminds me of this incident or this event where we went out to lunch, and this was probably 6 years ago, and I told her about this business idea, this idea. It wasn't really meant to be a business originally, um, but I told her about the mindful movement. This was my idea, and she always reminds me of that one lunch date that we had, and how it sort of started it all. But at the time, I was very, very interested in mindfulness as a lifestyle, and I was already teaching for over a decade and using mind body practices as a Pilates and yoga instructor. And I just was so passionate about seeing how mindfulness it made my life significantly better, my husband's. And I just had this vision or this idea that bringing mindfulness to more people would, I know this sounds sort of cliche, but it would make the world a better place. So that's where the idea or the name kind of came from. And it's sort of twofold, where you have mindful movement, right? Mindful exercise or movement, and then the idea that it is a movement to expand mindfulness into the world. So that's what we have as a business. We have guided meditations. We have what we call mindful tips, and they're just short teachings, 5-10 minute teachings. We have hypnosis practices that are available. We have some courses. We have actually a free 7-day foundations of meditation course, which is a really great place to get started. And all of those things can be found on our website.
Very, very good. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And you have a podcast, right? Tell us about
Oh,
that.
we do. Yes. Yes. The mindful movement itself started as a podcast, and I was doing interviews much like this, talking to wonderful people in the mindfulness and meditation community. And at the time, I was still running a Pilates and yoga studio locally in Maryland, and I had started a YouTube channel at the same time, and I quickly realized that that was too many things. I am the kind of person I'm very passionate. I'm very excited about doing things and projects and such. And I have a history of taking on more than I can really handle at one time. So I needed to figure out what would stay and what would go. And actually the interviews, after a couple months, I decided it just was too much for me. So I stopped doing the interviews. And then my husband actually restarted the podcast interviews about a year ago. So he does all of the interviews, and so we're kind of a partner.
And what's your husband's name?
My husband's name is Les, Les.
Okay. So it's Sarah and Les. Yeah. So that's fantastic. You're a team.
We're a team. Yeah. That's terrific. Has its challenges and its blessings at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of challenges, what's the biggest challenge you've had with your company and teaching this work?
Sure. I would say, 2020 was a big surprise for our business. Our business is kind of built around a YouTube channel. And in 2020, we grew quite a lot. And that was wonderful and also a big surprise. So we definitely had some growing pains with our business structure, as an organization. Some of the financial side of our business growth was it was a little bit challenging for us, for sure. But I think we're starting to, get back on track and feel like we're solid and we're settled, I guess.
So you both work full time in the business then?
I work full time in this business, and he works, I would say, part time. We also, as I said, we own a Pilates and yoga studio, and the same business owns a gym. So he is the one that runs the gym. He does the personal training and the group classes there. And so he's a little more part-time with the mindful movement.
I see. But even running a gym is very related to the work that you do, isn't it?
It is, for sure. Yes. Yeah.
Very interesting.
That you should hear our dinner table conversations. They're all about this.
I can imagine. Yeah, for sure. I always ask a question, Sarah, about bullying. Do you have a story about bullying where mindfulness would have made a difference?
I do. I was thinking about this, in preparation for our conversation, and I do have a recent story that I would be willing to share. I just need to make sure that if you're okay with this, the other side of the experience is I will keep their privacy, if that's fine with you.
Sure, of course.
So I shared a story about how I started in hypnosis, and I have a wonderful relationship with that teacher and mentor. And then a couple of years went by, and I was looking for continuing education, and I took a training with another teacher. and it was great. I really found a lot of value from it, and I think that it's made a significant improvement in my own practice, and working with clients. And so I have a YouTube channel, and it's obviously very public, and I have put out lots of content, and mindfulness is helping me. Even now, I'm feeling a little bit anxious talking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of that. Okay, so I was contacted by this teacher's company, and it really felt a little bit like they were bullying me in terms of they wanted to take legal action to force me to take down some content that I had put up. And I mean, honestly, I think that hypnosis is not a new thing,
Not
right?
at all.
It's been
Not
around
even
a long
slightly.
time.
Yes.
So, to say that a specific term is trademarked, it's a sentence that probably every single hypnotherapist has said. And I was trained to use this method. It just felt like I was being bullied to, this person, this teacher was hiding behind their big legal team and sending in the muscle, if you will, to force
Yeah.
me, this, sole proprietor individual, to take down my content, which in the end, I didn't. And it's still, great content that's available for lots of people to use. But circling back to the point of this story is the idea of using mindfulness. So having the awareness to connect with my emotions in response to what felt like bullying before I reacted in a way that I might later regret or could potentially have legal ramifications. I was able to check in and understand my experience, understand how I was feeling, and even more importantly, I think, know how I wanted to respond. Like, what are my intentions in this relationship, in my business, and how do I want to show up and present myself to the world and, to this organization. And I was also able to see that what I imagine is the other side of the story was coming from fear, and coming from the worry that maybe I don't want to say that I was going to like surpass her, but that someone else was going to be successful, um, was a little maybe scary for that individual. So,
Right.
it was still a challenging experience, but
Sure.
I do think that, my mindfulness experience and training helped me significantly get through the situation, and
Good.
to feel good about how I handled myself.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that you got through that in a
Yeah.
fairly positive way, because yes, that would be a difficult situation to move through for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarah, as we move forward in the interview, I want to ask you
Mhm.
5 quick answer questions. So just
Oh,
30-second answers are perfect. The first question is this: who is one person who has been a really powerful mindfulness influence on you?
I had one instructor or one mentor in my Pilates career, and she, I think, really had a big role in kind of the ball rolling down the hill in this direction. And she was the first person to really ask me why I was doing what I was doing. Like, what was my intention?
Mhm.
Why am I teaching? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And as simple as it sounds, it was really significant for me.
How has mindfulness affected your emotions or how you deal with your emotions?
Mm. That's probably one of the most significant ways that mindfulness has helped me. Uh, I was a very young mother, and I kind of just, fell into motherhood. And I was so focused on being a mom and taking care of my kids that I really never, at that time, I didn't look inward. I didn't connect with my emotions. And therefore, sometimes they would just, explode or they would force their way out. So having that practice of mindfulness and being able to be awake to my emotions really has transformed how I deal with them, or that I deal with them.
Right, right, for sure. Tell us
Yeah.
about breathing. How has breathing
Mm,
changed for you after you started practicing mindfulness?
mm. Breathing was really challenging for me when I first started. It was one of those things, like I said before, you have to be still, you have to pay attention, you have to turn your attention onto one thing. Um, but now I feel like with practice, it it is my go-to strategy. So if I'm feeling anxious or stressed, I do a lot of humming breath. It's kind of a auditory reminder of your breath. Um, but yeah, and it's been a significant tool in my whole family. My son uses it, my daughter. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Is there a book you can recommend that can help people with mindfulness?
The book that I think probably was a catalyst for me to go down this route is From Chaos to Clarity. It's a Philip Moffat. Oh, sorry, Emotional Chaos to Clarity is the title of the book. And it has lots of tips and strategies and practices that you can implement immediately. So that was really a very important book for me in my journey.
Excellent. Are there any apps that you ever recommend that can help people with mindfulness?
I don't have any apps specifically, but I do often recommend and use myself everyday signals. And what I mean by that is like pick something that you do on a very regular basis. Maybe it's brushing your teeth, or that's something you maybe only do twice a day. But if there's something that you do on a more regular basis, even walking through the threshold of a door or getting in your car or red light, so any of these things that happen on a very regular basis, uh, you can use them as a signal or a reminder to pause, breathe, connect with yourself inward. But it's not really an app, but it's kind of like a reminder.
Sure, sure. Well, that's really great to hear those bits of information about all of those five things. So if someone was listening today and they feel like, oh, I'm feeling stressed, I don't feel grounded, I wish I could
Mm.
kind of move forward in my life with a new level of contentment, what would you recommend? What would your words of wisdom be to them?
I guess I would start by saying congratulations on the first step is always the awareness, right? You are
Right.
able to recognize that you are stressed and that you want a different way. So I think that deserves a little bit of a celebration in a way, a pat on the
Yes.
back, good job. And then the next step would be to understand some practice that gives you uh, it's like a strategy or a practice that allows you to have love and acceptance for your experience. And then you can make the change that you want to make. But only after you've accepted that this is the experience. You stop resisting whatever it is that is causing the stress, because the resistance will, I'm sure you're aware, add additional stress and suffering.
Absolutely.
So
The
hopefully that
Mindful
helps.
Movement, Mindful Tribe,
Hmm.
go to themindfulmovement.com and find Sara Raymond and all the things that she offers. And thank you, Sara, so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for having me. I always love connecting with others that are like-minded. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, all the best to you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.